The night Vivian Hale walked back into Adrian Voss's life, she wasn't his wife anymore. She was his worst nightmare. At New York's most exclusive charity gala, a man stood ready to destroy his marriage in front of 500 witnesses. What he didn't know was that his wife had already destroyed him first. She'd been gone for months, erased herself completely, and was about to walk through those ballroom doors with a power that would shatter everything he thought he controlled. This is that story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Vivian's revenge travels. The Grand Meridian Hotel rose 43 stories above Manhattan, its penthouse ballroom glittering like a jewelry box suspended in the winter sky. Outside, December wind rattled the windows. Inside, New York's elite circulated beneath crystal chandeliers, their laughter mixing with champagne and the string quartet's rendition of something classical that nobody actually listened to. Adrian Voss stood near the bar, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. "You're fidgeting," Lena Marquez said beside him, her red dress cut low enough to be memorable, but high enough to maintain plausible deniability. "Stop fidgeting. You look guilty." "I'm not guilty of anything," Adrian said, though his fingers kept finding his cufflinks, adjusting them unnecessarily. "I'm just ready to get this over with." Lena's smile was sharp. "Cold feet? No." He took a drink from a passing waiter's tray. Scotch, neat, too expensive to taste like anything but wood and regret. "I've been ready for this for months. I'm just tired of pretending." Pretending. That was the word he'd used when he first started seeing Lena 8 months ago. "I'm tired of pretending to be happy." As if happiness was something you performed rather than felt. As if Vivian was an audience he'd grown bored entertaining. "Then let's not pretend anymore," Lena said, touching his arm. Her nails were the same shade as her dress. "Tonight, we tell everyone. Clean break. New beginning." Adrian nodded, but his eyes swept the ballroom again. Habit, maybe. Or guilt, despite what he'd just said. He was looking for Vivian's face in the crowd, the face he'd been looking through for the past 3 years of their marriage. He wouldn't find it. Vivian Hale hadn't attended a society event in 6 months. Actually, Adrian realized with a strange jolt, he hadn't seen Vivian in 6 months. Not really. She'd stopped coming to these things around July. Said she was tired. Said she needed space. He'd been relieved, honestly. It made everything with Lena easier. "Mr. Voss?" A hand clapped his shoulder. Marcus Chen, hedge fund manager, Yale classmate, insufferable but connected. "Hell of a party. Your table's right up front, I see. Big announcement coming?" Adrian's prepared smile slipped into place. "Maybe. You'll have to wait and see." "I love surprises," Marcus said, though his eyes said he already knew. Society circles were small and gossip traveled fast. Everyone here probably suspected something. Tonight would just make it official. Lena's hand found the small of Adrian's back, a gesture of possession disguised as affection. Marcus noticed. His eyebrows rose fractionally. "Lena," Marcus said. "Stunning as always. That dress is expensive," Lena finished, "and temporary. I never keep things I wear to these events. Too much bad energy." Marcus laughed uncertainly and moved on. "Was that necessary?" Adrian muttered. "Was what necessary?" "The whole 'I don't keep things' line. You know how that sounds." Lena turned to face him fully. "I know exactly how it sounds. Like I'm a woman who doesn't settle for anything less than what she wants." Which is true. "You're going to make this harder than it needs to be." "I'm making this harder?" Her voice stayed low, controlled, but Adrian caught the edge in it. "You're the one who's been married for 5 years. You're the one who promised me 3 months ago that you'd end it. And yet here we are, and your wife still exists somewhere in this city, probably crying into her wine, while you nervously adjust your cufflinks like a man about to commit a crime." "Vivian isn't crying," Adrian said automatically, though he had no idea what Vivian was doing. He hadn't asked, hadn't cared to. The truth was, Vivian had become a ghost long before tonight. Even when they still lived in the same apartment, before she moved out in August without explanation, she'd been absent. No fights, no tears, just silence that filled rooms like fog. Adrian told himself it was mutual, that they'd both checked out, that divorce was mercy, not cruelty. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed through the sound system. Gregory Whitmore, event chair, gripping the microphone on the small stage at the ballroom's north end. If I could have your attention for just a moment. The crowd settled into attentive quiet, the kind of practiced silence wealthy people used to pretend they cared about charity auctions and keynote speeches. We have a very special guest joining us tonight, Gregory continued. Someone many of you haven't seen in quite some time. A dear friend, a brilliant philanthropist, and a woman who needs no introduction. Adrian's attention drifted. Probably another board member, another rich widow with a foundation named after her dead husband. He started mentally rehearsing his own announcement. Vivian and I have decided to part ways. No, too formal. I want to introduce you to someone important to me. Too vague. I'm in love with Lena Marquez, and please welcome Vivian Volkov. The name landed like a stone through glass. Adrian's head snapped up. Around him, the ballroom erupted into applause, but he couldn't hear it. Couldn't hear anything except the blood suddenly rushing in his ears. Volkov. Not Hale, not Voss. Volkov. The ballroom's main doors opened, and she walked in. For a moment, Adrian didn't recognize her. Couldn't reconcile the woman moving through the crowd with the wife he'd last seen in their apartment, wearing sweatpants in silence. This woman wore black. A dress that looked like midnight had been sewn into fabric, simple but devastating. Her dark hair was shorter, sharper. Her posture was different. She moved like water, like gravity had different rules for her than everyone else. And beside her, a step behind but unmistakably with her, walked a man who made every other person in the room look like furniture. Roman Volkov. Adrian knew the name. Everyone did. If you operated in New York's upper echelons long enough, you heard whispers. Roman Volkov didn't attend charity galas. He funded them, occasionally, through shell companies and intermediaries. He didn't make speeches or shake hands. He didn't need to. His power was the kind that existed in shadows, in closed-door meetings, in decisions made by other people who knew better than to ask questions. And now he was here, standing 3 feet behind Vivian, watching the room with eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. Adrian, Lena whispered, is that? Yes. That's your wife? Was, Adrian corrected automatically, though he had no idea if that was true. Was my wife. Vivian reached the stage. Gregory Whitmore kissed her cheek, beaming like he'd personally orchestrated her resurrection. The microphone exchanged hands. Hello, Vivian said. Her voice was the same. That was somehow worse. Everything else had changed, but her voice was still the voice that had said, I love you 5 years ago at their wedding. Still the voice that had stopped saying it 3 years later. I know I've been absent, Vivian continued, addressing the room with a calm that bordered on eerie. And I apologize for the mystery. The truth is, I needed time to step back, to rebuild, to remember who I was before I became someone else's shadow. Scattered applause. Uncomfortable laughter from people who weren't sure if that last line was a joke. Adrian's hands had gone cold. He set his drink down before he dropped it. But I'm back now, Vivian said, and I'm here tonight to support the Carter Foundation, which does incredible work for domestic abuse survivors, women who lost themselves, women who found the strength to leave, women who discovered that the end of one life can be the beginning of something better. More applause. Louder this time. Someone whistled. Vivian smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I'm also here to clear up some confusion. I know many of you still know me as Vivian Hale, or more recently, as Mrs. Adrian Voss. Adrian stopped breathing. I need to correct that, Vivian said. Legally, publicly, and permanently. As of 4 months ago, I am no longer married to Adrian Voss. Our marriage was dissolved quietly by mutual agreement. Lies. That was Adrian's first thought. Lies, because he'd never signed divorce papers. He'd never even discussed. But then he remembered. August. The courier who'd shown up at his office with documents. He'd barely looked at them. Property transfer agreements, his assistant had said. Something about the upstate house. He'd signed them and moved on. Oh, I want to thank Adrian for his understanding during that process, Vivian continued, her eyes finding him in the crowd now, finding him and holding him in place like a moth pinned to cardboard. He made it very easy, almost like he wanted it too. The room was so quiet that Adrian could hear his own heartbeat. Beside him, Lena had gone rigid. I also want to introduce you all to my husband, Vivian said, and the word husband hit Adrian like a fist to the throat. Roman Volkov. Some of you may know him. Some of you may know his reputation. What you should know is that he's a man who understands the value of loyalty, of protection, of making sure the people he cares about are never vulnerable again. Roman stepped forward. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just stood there, a wall of silent intimidation in a perfectly cut suit. We've established the Volkov Foundation tonight, Vivian said. $100 million dedicated to supporting women leaving abusive situations. Starting over, taking back control. Applause erupted. Genuine this time, enthusiastic. Adrian couldn't hear it through the ringing in his ears. Vivian descended from the stage. People swarmed her immediately. Congratulations, questions, hands to shake. She handled it all with grace, with that new coldness Adrian didn't recognize. We need to leave, Lena hissed. Right now. No. Adrian, everyone is staring at... I need to talk to her. Are you insane? Did you not just hear what she... But Adrian was already moving, pushing through the crowd, ignoring the looks, the whispers starting to ripple outward like blood in water. He reached Vivian just as she finished talking to someone from the mayor's office. Roman's eyes tracked Adrian's approach, but the man didn't move, didn't speak. Vivian, she turned. Up close, the changes were even more pronounced. Her skin looked different, healthier. Her eyes were clear. She looked like someone who'd been sick for years and suddenly, violently, recovered. Adrian, she said pleasantly, I was hoping we'd get a chance to talk. What the hell was that? That was a speech, for charity. Did you not approve of the cause? You know what I mean. The divorce. We never discussed it. Vivian's head tilted slightly. No, we didn't, but you signed the papers. In August. Remember? You told me those were property transfers. They were. My property. Being transferred out of your name. The divorce decree was stapled to the back, page 16, I think. You really should read things before you sign them, Adrian. That's basic contract law. Someone laughed nearby. Adrian realized they had an audience. A small one, trying to pretend they weren't listening. You tricked me, he said quietly. I simplified things, Vivian corrected. You wanted out. I could see it every time you looked through me instead of at me. Every late night at the office. Every business trip that coincidentally aligned with Lena's travel schedule. Adrian's stomach dropped. You knew. Of course I knew. I'm not stupid, just quiet. There's a difference. Then why? He struggled for words. Why not just say something? Why this elaborate, because I don't care about your affair, Adrian. Vivian's voice was soft, almost kind. I stopped caring about you months before you stopped caring about me. Maybe years. The exact timing doesn't matter. What matters is that you were so focused on sneaking around, so busy planning your dramatic reveal, that you didn't notice I was planning my exit. By marrying a mobster? Vivian's expression didn't change, but Roman Volkov shifted slightly behind her. A small movement that somehow filled the entire space. Careful, Vivian said. Roman doesn't like that word. And even if it were accurate, which it's not, you should ask yourself why I'd choose someone dangerous over someone safe. Maybe safe wasn't actually safe at all. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. He had no response to that. No defense. I'm not here to hurt you, Vivian continued. I'm here to move on. I suggest you do the same. You have Lena. You have your announcement to make. Don't let me stop you. Vivian. But she was already turning away, Roman's hand settling on her lower back as they moved toward another cluster of admirers. Adrian stood frozen, watching her disappear into the crowd. Jesus Christ. Lena appeared at his elbow, champagne in hand, face pale. Tell me you didn't just have that conversation in front of half of New York society. She knew, Adrian said numbly. She knew about us, the whole time. So what? We knew it would come out eventually. That was the whole point of tonight. No, you don't understand. She knew and she didn't care. She just left. Good. Then there's no problem. We can still... There's a problem, Adrian said, his eyes still tracking Vivian across the ballroom. Because I thought I was in control. I thought I was making the decision. But she was 3 steps ahead of me the entire time. So she beat you to the punch. Who cares? You got what you wanted. Freedom. Did he? Adrian wasn't sure anymore. Freedom was supposed to feel different than this. Lighter. Not like standing in a ballroom watching his former wife command a room he'd spent years trying to impress. I need to know something, he said. About Volkov. About how she… No. Lena's hand gripped his arm, hard. Whatever you're thinking, stop. That man is dangerous, like actual danger, not metaphorical. You start digging into Roman Volkov's business, you won't like what you find. I'm not afraid of… You should be. I am. And I'm not even on his radar. You, on the other hand… She gestured vaguely at the ballroom, at Vivian holding court near the dessert table, at Roman standing sentinel beside her. You just became relevant to him. And trust me, you don't want to be relevant to Roman Volkov. Adrian pulled his arm free. I'm going to find out what's going on. Adrian, I'm going to find out how she met him, why she married him, what kind of game she's… It's not a game. Lena's voice rose, then dropped again when people turned to look. Listen to me. Vivian didn't play you. She left you. There's a difference. And now she's moved on with someone who could buy and sell both of us before breakfast. Let it go. But Adrian couldn't, because somewhere in the back of his mind, beneath the shock and the wounded pride, a different feeling was taking root. Jealousy. Not because Vivian had found someone else, but because she'd found power. The kind of power Adrian had spent his entire career chasing and never quite reaching. The kind that didn't need to announce itself or justify itself or apologize for itself. She'd walked into this ballroom and commanded it without effort, without even trying. When had Vivian learned to do that? Adrian Voss. Marcus Chen again, drunk now, grinning. Hell of a party, man. Your ex-wife is something else. That donation, 100 million, where'd she get that kind of money? I don't know, Adrian said. Volkov money, probably. You know what they say about him. Legitimate businesses, sure, but also… Marcus made a vague gesture that could mean anything. Allegedly, of course, can't prove anything. But the rumors alone… What rumors? Adrian asked, even though he shouldn't. Even though Lena was tugging his sleeve, trying to pull him away. Marcus leaned in, whiskey breath and conspiracy. Real estate. Import-export. Lots of shell companies. The kind of setup that looks clean on paper, but probably isn't. And the people he associates with, let's just say they're not attending charity galas for fun. Marcus, shut up, Lena hissed. You're drunk. I'm informed, Marcus corrected. And I'm telling Adrian what everyone else is too polite to say. Your ex-wife married into something complicated, something you probably don't want to examine too closely. Why not? Adrian demanded. If it's illegal, there are very powerful people making sure it stays buried. And if you start asking questions, you become a problem. Problems get solved. Are you following me? Adrian was following him. He just didn't care. The rest of the night passed in fragments. Lena made excuses and left early, angry that Adrian wouldn't leave with her. Adrian stayed, drinking too much, watching Vivian from across the ballroom. She never looked at him again. Not once. It was like he'd ceased to exist. Around midnight, the crowd thinned. Vivian and Roman left together, surrounded by people Adrian didn't recognize. Security, maybe. Or associates. It was hard to tell. Adrian found himself at the bar, alone, nursing his fifth scotch. You look miserable. The bartender, a young woman with short blonde hair and a name tag that said Sophie. I'm fine. You're really not. But that's okay. Most people at these things aren't. Adrian laughed humorlessly. You're very honest for someone working a private event. I quit in an hour. They can't fire me twice. Sophie leaned against the bar. Let me guess, the woman in black, the one everyone's talking about. Is it that obvious? Only to everyone with eyes. You spent half the night staring at her like she'd stolen something from you. She did. What? Adrian considered the question. What had Vivian stolen? Not his happiness. That was gone long before tonight. Not his freedom. He'd wanted the divorce as much as she had. Not even his dignity, really. He'd been planning to humiliate himself publicly by announcing Lena. Vivian had just beaten him to a different announcement. So what had she taken? Control, he said finally. She took control. Sophie poured him water instead of scotch. Sounds like it wasn't yours to begin with. Wise words from a bartender? I'm a philosophy major. Bartending pays better. She pushed the water toward him. Drink this. Go home. Sleep it off. And tomorrow, ask yourself if you're actually upset about losing her, or just upset that she won. Adrian drank the water. It tasted like tap and regret. He left the hotel around 1 a.m., stepping into December cold that sobered him faster than coffee. His driver was waiting. The ride home, to the penthouse apartment he'd once shared with Vivian, took 20 minutes through empty streets. The apartment felt enormous and hollow. Vivian's absence had always been present, a ghost occupying rooms she no longer used. But tonight it felt different. Final. Adrian found himself in his study, opening his laptop, typing Roman Volkov into the search bar. The results were sparse. A few business profiles, some charity work, photos from events where he stood in the background. Never the focus. But in the image results, Adrian found something that made his blood freeze. A photo from 6 months ago. July. A gallery opening in Chelsea. Vivian and Roman standing together near a sculpture. Not touching, but close. She was smiling, actually smiling, the way she used to smile at Adrian years ago, before everything went cold. The photo was dated July 14th. Adrian and Lena had started sleeping together in June, which meant Vivian had met Roman around the same time. Maybe before. Which meant... Adrian sat back in his chair, the pieces rearranging themselves into a picture he didn't like. Vivian hadn't left him because he'd cheated. She'd left him because she'd found something better, someone better. And she'd planned it, carefully, quietly. While Adrian was busy sneaking around with Lena, thinking he was getting away with something, Vivian had been orchestrating her exit. The divorce papers hidden in property transfers, the public announcement at a gala where Adrian couldn't make a scene, the new last name, the new husband, the new power. She'd played him. Not maliciously, just efficiently. And the worst part, the part that made Adrian want to throw his laptop through the window, was that he couldn't even be angry. Because she was right. He had wanted out. He had looked through her instead of at her. He had treated their marriage like an inconvenience to be managed rather than a commitment to be honored. He just hadn't expected her to leave first. His phone buzzed. Lena, we need to talk. Tomorrow. Adrian stared at the message. Tomorrow. Sure. They could talk tomorrow. About what? About how their grand plan to go public had been preempted by his ex-wife's better, cleaner exit? About how everyone at the gala had looked at them with pity instead of scandal? About how Vivian Hale had become Vivian Volkov and left them both looking like amateurs? He didn't respond. Instead, he pulled up the guest list from tonight's event, scrolling through names until he found what he was looking for. Gregory Whitmore's contact information. Gregory would know. Gregory always knew. He'd introduced Vivian tonight, had kissed her cheek like an old friend. He'd know how she'd met Roman, how long they'd been together. What the hell had happened in the 6 months since Adrian had last paid attention to his own wife? Adrian drafted an email. Gregory, need to talk. Coffee tomorrow? Adrian? He hit send before he could reconsider. Outside, snow started to fall. New York's first snowfall of the season, arriving right on schedule, blanketing the city in white that would turn to gray slush by morning. Adrian sat in his study until dawn, drinking coffee, searching for information on Roman Volkov that didn't exist, trying to understand how his wife, his quiet, forgettable, invisible wife, had transformed into someone he didn't recognize, trying to understand how he'd lost something he hadn't even known he wanted to keep. Somewhere across the city, in a penthouse Adrian would never see, Vivian Volkov was probably sleeping. Or maybe she was awake too, planning her next move. It didn't matter. Either way, she wasn't thinking about Adrian, and that, more than anything else that had happened tonight, was what kept him up until sunrise. The realization that he had become irrelevant, that Vivian had moved on, and that whatever came next, whatever consequences or revelations or complications awaited, Adrian would face them alone, with nothing but his own bad decisions for company. The snow continued to fall, and in his empty apartment, Adrian Voss sat in the dark and realized that divorce was supposed to be his ending. But for Vivian, it had only been the beginning. Gregory Whitmore didn't respond to Adrian's email until noon the next day, which was unusual. Gregory responded to everything within an hour. It was one of his defining characteristics, that desperate need to be helpful, to be connected, to matter. Lunch, 1 p.m. The usual place. Come alone. The usual place was Chandler's, a steakhouse in Midtown, where deals happened over bone-in ribeyes and bourbon older than most of the waitstaff. Adrian arrived 10 minutes early, was seated immediately, and spent those 10 minutes watching the door. Gregory walked in at 1:03, which for him might as well have been late. He looked tired, older than he had last night, the kind of exhaustion that came from knowing too much and saying too little. Adrian! He slid into the booth across from him, didn't offer his hand. You look terrible. I didn't sleep. I'm shocked. Gregory signaled the waiter, ordered a martini before the man even reached the table. Vivian's reappearance must have been quite the surprise. You knew, Adrian said. It wasn't a question. I organized the event. Of course I knew. And you didn't think to warn me? Gregory's laugh was dry, humorless. Warn you about what? That your ex-wife was attending a charity gala? That she'd made a generous donation? What exactly should I have said that wouldn't have violated about 6 different confidentiality agreements? You could have told me she was married. Could I? Gregory leaned back as his martini arrived. He took a long drink before continuing. Let me ask you something, Adrian. When was the last time you and I talked about Vivian? Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. He genuinely couldn't remember. Exactly, Gregory said. You stopped mentioning her months ago. Stopped bringing her to events. Stopped asking about her when she stopped showing up. So forgive me if I assumed you didn't care what she was doing. I cared. No. You were distracted. There's a difference. Gregory set his glass down carefully. You were busy with Lena Marquez, which, by the way, everyone knew about. Did you think you were being subtle? Heat crept up Adrian's neck. This isn't about Lena. Then what is it about? I want to know how Vivian met Roman Volkov. I want to know how long they've been together. I want to know what kind of man I'm dealing with. You're not dealing with him at all, Gregory said sharply. That's the point. You and Vivian are divorced. She's moved on. You should do the same. I can't just... Yes, you can. Adrian, listen to me very carefully. Gregory leaned forward, his voice dropping to something that wasn't quite a whisper but carried weight anyway. Roman Volkov is not someone you investigate. He's not someone you confront. He's not someone you even think about too hard. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is he dangerous? He's powerful, which is the same thing, just with better lawyers. Adrian absorbed that. So the rumors are true about his business. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Gregory sighed, rubbed his eyes like Adrian was a problem he hadn't budgeted time for. What do you want me to tell you? That Roman Volkov built his empire on questionable foundations, that some of his business associates have connections to organizations most people wouldn't want to acknowledge, that there are rumors, just rumors mind you, about money moving through channels that don't appear on tax returns. Is any of that true? Does it matter? He's never been charged with anything, never even been seriously investigated, and you know why? Because he's smart, because he insulates himself, and because the people who could cause him problems tend to develop sudden attacks of good judgment. Adrian felt cold. Are you threatening me? I'm advising you, as a friend. Gregory finished his martini. Vivian chose him. Whatever her reasons, she chose him. And now she's under his protection, which means you leave her alone. You don't dig into her business, you don't ask questions about her husband, you accept the divorce, count yourself lucky it was clean, and move on with your life. And if I don't? Gregory looked at him for a long moment. Then you're stupider than I thought. They ordered lunch. Adrian got a salad he didn't eat. Gregory got a steak he barely touched. The conversation shifted to safer topics. The market. Mutual acquaintances. Anything but Vivian. But as they were leaving, Gregory caught Adrian's arm in the parking lot. She met him at an art auction, Gregory said quietly. July, private event, very exclusive. Vivian was there alone. You were in Boston with Lena, I think. Roman was there buying a Rothko. They started talking. That's all I know. How do you know that much? Because I was there too. I saw them. Gregory released Adrian's arm. She looked happy, Adrian, happier than I'd seen her in years. And when someone who's been invisible that long suddenly becomes visible again, you pay attention. What's that supposed to mean? It means your wife spent 3 years fading away while you stopped looking at her. And then she met someone who actually saw her, who saw what she could be. And she bloomed. Gregory's expression was somewhere between pity and disgust. You want to know what kind of man Roman Volkov is? He's the kind who noticed your wife when you didn't. Make of that what you will. He walked away before Adrian could respond. Adrian sat in his car for 20 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, staring at nothing. His phone kept buzzing. Lena, probably. He didn't check. Instead, he drove downtown. Not to his office, not home. To a building on 42nd Street that housed a private investigation firm he'd used once before, years ago, when he'd needed background checks on a potential business partner. The receptionist recognized him. Mr. Voss, we weren't expecting you. Is Davis available? I'll check. Malcolm Davis was 50-something, ex-FBI, and expensive. He also had a reputation for finding things people wanted to stay hidden. Adrian had paid him $30,000 3 years ago to investigate a man who'd later gone to prison for securities fraud. Adrian, Davis emerged from his office, hand extended. Long time. What can I do for you? I need information on someone. Don't you always? Davis gestured him inside. The office was exactly as Adrian remembered. Cluttered desk, filing cabinets that probably violated every digital storage regulation, coffee maker that looked like it belonged in a museum. Adrian sat. Roman Volkov. Davis's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. That's a name I haven't heard in a while. You know him? I know of him. Everyone in my line of work does. Davis sat down heavily. Why do you want information on Roman Volkov? He married my ex-wife. Ah. Davis nodded slowly, like that explained everything. And you want to know what kind of man she married, whether she's safe, whether he's legitimate. All of that. I can't help you. Adrian blinked. What? I said I can't help you. I won't take this case. Why not? I'll pay whatever. It's not about money, Adrian. It's about survival. Davis stood, walked to his coffee maker, poured himself a cup without offering Adrian any. Roman Volkov is not someone you investigate. I learned that lesson 5 years ago when a client paid me 50 grand to look into his import business. You know what I found? What? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Clean books, legal operations, everything perfectly documented. Davis took a long drink of coffee, which should have been my first clue that something was very, very wrong. I don't understand. Nobody's that clean, Adrian. Nobody who operates at Volkov's level has zero skeletons, which means either he's genuinely legitimate, unlikely, or he's better at hiding things than I am at finding them. And in my experience, when someone's that good at staying hidden, it's because they've had practice making problems disappear. You're scared of him. I'm smart enough to recognize when I'm outmatched. There's a difference. Davis set his cup down. Look, I'll give you some free advice. Your ex-wife is gone. Whatever life she's building with Volkov, it's her life now. You had your chance with her. You blew it. Move on. Everyone keeps telling me to move on. Then maybe you should listen. Adrian stood. If you won't help me, I'll find someone who will. Good luck with that. Most investigators worth their fee know Volkov's name, and the ones who don't aren't investigators I'd trust. Adrian left without another word, frustration burning in his chest like bad liquor. Outside, the December cold hit him like a slap. His phone was ringing again. This time he checked. Lena. He answered. What? Well, hello to you too. Her voice was sharp. Where are you? Downtown. Doing what? Nothing. Running errands. You're lying. You're doing that thing where your voice gets flat when you lie. A pause. You're still thinking about her, aren't you? About Vivian. Adrian didn't respond. Adrian, we need to talk. Actually talk. Not you avoiding me and me pretending everything's fine. Fine. When? Now. Meet me at my place. I can't right now, sis. Make time. She hung up. Adrian stood on the sidewalk, people rushing past him, the city moving at its usual frantic pace while he felt stuck in place. He should go see Lena. He should apologize for last night, for his distraction, for caring about Vivian when he was supposed to be building something new. Instead, he got back in his car and drove to the gallery where Gregory had said Vivian met Roman. Chelsea. A place Adrian had never been because art bored him, and Vivian had stopped asking him to go with her years ago. The gallery was small, understated, the kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. Adrian walked in. A woman at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for information about an auction. July, private event." "Are you a member?" "No, but..." "Then I can't help you. Our private auctions are invitation only, and we don't discuss our clients." "I just need to know who attended. Specifically, a woman named Vivian Hale, or Volkov." The woman's expression cooled. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm not trying to cause trouble, if you don't leave, I'll call security." Adrian left. Because what else could he do? He couldn't force information out of people, couldn't make them care about his questions. He sat in his car outside the gallery and finally, inevitably, called Lena back. "I'm on my way," he said when she answered. "Good, because we really need to talk." Lena's apartment was in Soho, a loft she'd bought with family money and decorated with what Adrian had once called minimalist and now just thought of as cold. White walls, concrete floors, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread rather than a home. She opened the door wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, no makeup, her hair pulled back. She looked younger this way, more vulnerable. "Come in," she said. Adrian followed her to the living room. She didn't offer him a drink. That was his first warning that this conversation wouldn't go well. "So," Lena said, sitting on her pristine white couch, "are we going to talk about last night, or are we going to keep pretending it didn't happen? What do you want me to say? I want you to say you're over her. I want you to say that seeing Vivian with someone else doesn't matter. I want you to say you're ready to move forward with me." "I am ready." "You're lying again." Lena's voice was calm, which was worse than if she'd yelled. "You spent all of last night staring at her. You left early this morning. Yes, I checked your location, don't look at me like that, to meet with Gregory, who I'm guessing told you to leave it alone. And then you went to a private investigator. Did I miss anything?" Adrian felt like he'd been punched. "You're tracking my phone? You shared your location with me 6 months ago. Remember? When you were staying late at the office and I was paranoid you were still seeing your wife? That's different." "How? How is it different?" Lena stood, pacing now. "You wanted me to trust you, to believe you were done with Vivian, and I did. I trusted you, and now here we are, one day after she shows up with a new husband and you're already investigating him. What am I supposed to think? I just want to understand." "Understand what?" "She moved on, faster than you, better than you, with someone more powerful than you, and your ego can't handle it." "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about, Adrian? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're obsessed with a woman who doesn't want you anymore." The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because they were true. Maybe because hearing Lena say them made them real. "I'm not obsessed," Adrian said quietly. "I'm just trying to make sense of it." "There's nothing to make sense of. She left. You wanted her to leave. She just did it first and did it better. Accept it." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because..." Adrian stopped. Why couldn't he? What was stopping him from just letting Vivian go, from focusing on Lena, on the future they'd supposedly been planning? Pride, maybe. Or control. Or the sudden realization that he'd spent 5 years with a woman he'd thought he knew, only to discover he'd never known her at all. "Because I don't understand how I missed it," he said finally. "How I didn't see her changing, leaving, planning her exit while I was planning mine." Lena's expression softened slightly. "Maybe you didn't want to see it. Maybe it was easier to think she was the one who'd given up, the one who'd let the marriage die." "Are you saying this is my fault?" "I'm saying it takes 2 people to kill a marriage, and you weren't exactly innocent." Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. "Are you having second thoughts? About us?" Lena was quiet for a long moment. "I'm having thoughts about whether the man I'm with is actually here with me, or still somewhere else, chasing ghosts." "I'm here. Are you?" She sat back down, closer to him this time. "Because I need to know, Adrian. I need to know if this is real, or if I'm just the woman you used to distract yourself from a marriage you were too scared to end properly." It's real, Adrian said, but even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. Lena must have heard the doubt in his voice because she pulled back. You should go. Lena, no. I'm serious. Go home. Think about what you actually want, because I'm not going to compete with a woman who isn't even in the room. I'm not going to spend the next year wondering if you're thinking about her every time you look at me. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's honest. She stood, walked to the door, opened it. Call me when you figure your shit out, or don't. I'm not waiting around either way. Adrian left. Because what else could he do? He couldn't promise her something he wasn't sure he could deliver, couldn't swear he'd stop thinking about Vivian when he didn't understand why he was thinking about her in the first place. He drove home through rush hour traffic, the city grinding around him, his phone silent for once. No calls from Lena, no emails from Gregory, nothing but the sound of his own thoughts, which were louder and less coherent than he wanted them to be. His apartment felt emptier than usual. Adrian poured himself a drink, scotch, the expensive kind he'd been saving for a special occasion that never came, and sat in his living room as darkness fell outside. His laptop was still open on the coffee table from last night, still showing the search results for Roman Volkov, still offering nothing useful. Adrian closed it, opened it again, typed in a different search. Vivian Hale art collector. This time results appeared. Several results. Articles from gallery websites. Blog posts from art review sites. Photos from openings and auctions. Vivian at a gallery in Brooklyn. Vivian at a museum fundraiser. Vivian at a private showing in the Hamptons. All from the past year. All while Adrian thought she was at home, being quiet, being invisible. She'd had an entire life he hadn't known about, hadn't bothered to ask about. In one photo, dated August, the month she'd moved out, Vivian stood in front of a painting Adrian didn't recognize. She was smiling. Not the polite smile she'd worn during their marriage. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes. Behind her, barely visible in the background, was Roman Volkov. Adrian zoomed in. Roman wasn't looking at the painting. He was looking at Vivian, and his expression, it wasn't possessive or predatory, it was protective, attentive. It was the way Adrian used to look at Vivian years ago, before everything became routine and obligation. His phone rang. Unknown number. Adrian almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him pick up. Hello? Adrian Voss? A man's voice, deep, accented, Russian maybe, but faint. Who is this? My name is Dmitri. I work for Roman Volkov. He would like to speak with you. Adrian's heart kicked into overdrive. About what? He'll explain. Are you available tomorrow? Say 10 a.m. Where? Mr. Volkov's office. I'll text you the address. Please come alone. The line went dead before Adrian could respond. He sat there, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. Roman Volkov wanted to meet with him. Why? To threaten him? To warn him off? To... His phone buzzed. The address appeared. An office building downtown, 23rd floor. Adrian stared at it for a long time. Every rational part of his brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. That meeting with Roman Volkov was asking for trouble. That he should decline, block the number, maybe even call the police. But a smaller, angrier part of him, the part that had spent the last 24 hours feeling powerless and confused, wanted answers. Wanted to look Roman Volkov in the eye and understand what the hell had happened to his marriage. Wanted to know what Roman had that Adrian didn't. He texted back a single word. Okay. The response came immediately. See you tomorrow. Adrian didn't sleep that night either. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, playing out a dozen different scenarios for tomorrow's meeting. None of them ended well. All of them ended with him knowing something he probably didn't want to know. At 6 a.m., he gave up on sleep and went for a run. Central Park was frozen and empty, his breath fogging in the pre-dawn darkness. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs ached, and he couldn't think about anything except the physical act of movement. When he got back to his apartment, there was an email from his lawyer. Adrian, Vivian's legal team reached out. They want to finalize some property division details. Nothing contentious. Should be straightforward. Can you come by the office this afternoon? Property division. Right. Because the divorce was real and final and there were still practical matters to handle. Money. Possessions. The mechanics of separating a life. Adrian typed a response agreeing to the meeting, then showered, dressed, and tried to eat breakfast. The food tasted like nothing. At 9:30, he left for Roman's office. The building was modern glass and steel, the kind of structure that probably had a waiting list for tenants. The lobby was marble and cold efficiency. Adrian gave his name to security, was checked against a list, and directed to the elevators. 23rd floor. The elevator ride felt both too long and too short. When the doors opened, he stepped into a reception area that looked more like a hotel suite than an office. Dark wood, leather furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Adrian's car. A woman at the desk, mid-30s, professional, unsmiling, looked up. "Mr. Voss? Mr. Volkov is expecting you. This way." She led him down a hallway, heels clicking on hardwood, until they reached a set of double doors. She knocked once, opened them, and gestured Adrian inside. The office beyond was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a desk that looked hand-carved, more art. And standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, was Roman Volkov. "Adrian," Roman said, turning. His voice was exactly what Adrian expected, measured, accented, calm. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has choices. You chose to come. I appreciate that." Roman gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." Adrian sat. Roman remained standing, which felt deliberate. A power play. Or maybe just habit. "I assume you're wondering why I asked you here," Roman said. The thought crossed my mind. "I wanted to meet you, to understand who Vivian was married to, who she left behind." Roman studied him the way someone might study a painting, looking for meaning in brushstrokes. "I also wanted to make something very clear before you do something foolish." "And what's that?" "Vivian is my wife now. She is under my protection, which means you leave her alone. You don't investigate her. You don't investigate me. You don't ask questions about our marriage or our business or anything else that isn't your concern." Adrian felt his jaw tighten. "Is that a threat?" "It's a clarification. I don't make threats, Adrian. I make observations. And my observation is that you've been asking questions, calling investigators, digging into things that don't involve you anymore. How do you—" Adrian stopped. Of course Roman knew. Malcolm Davis had probably called him the moment Adrian left his office. Maybe even before. "I have people who tell me things," Roman said simply. "It's how I stay informed, and right now I'm informed that you're having difficulty accepting your divorce." I'm not trying to win her back if that's what you think. No. You're trying to understand what happened. Why she chose me. What I have that you don't. Roman moved to his desk, leaned against it casually. "You want me to tell you that I'm dangerous, that Vivian married me out of fear or desperation, that this is some kind of mistake she'll regret. Isn't it? No, Vivian married me because I offered her something you couldn't. Respect, attention, partnership." Roman's eyes were cold, analytical. "You treated her like furniture, Adrian. Useful when needed, ignorable when not. I treated her like a person. The choice was easy." The words landed like punches. Adrian wanted to argue, to defend himself, but what defense did he have? Roman was right. Everything he'd said was right. "So that's it?" Adrian said. "You called me here to tell me I was a bad husband?" "I called you here to tell you that your marriage is over. Vivian has moved on, and you need to do the same before you make this difficult." "Difficult how?" Roman smiled. It wasn't warm. "You really want to know what I'm capable of? What happens to people who make problems for me?" "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you. There's a difference." Roman pushed off the desk. "But since you're curious, no, I'm not going to hurt you. I don't need to. All I need to do is make a few phone calls, talk to a few people, and suddenly your business relationships dry up. Your contracts fall through, your reputation develops. Complications. You can't. I can. And I will, if you force my hand. But I'd rather not. I'd rather you accept reality, sign whatever papers your lawyer puts in front of you, and move forward with your life." Roman walked to the door, opened it. "This conversation is over, Adrian. You can leave with the understanding that we never need to speak again. Or you can leave angry and do something stupid. Your choice." Adrian stood slowly. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage, from the humiliation of being lectured by the man who'd taken his wife. from the realization that he had no power here, no leverage, no control. "She deserves better than you," Adrian said. "Yes," Roman agreed, "she does, but she chose me anyway, because even my worst is better than your best." He gestured to the hallway. "Goodbye, Adrian." Adrian left, walked past the receptionist, into the elevator, through the lobby, out into the December cold. He made it half a block before he had to stop, lean against a building, breathe. His phone buzzed. His lawyer. "Meeting at 3 p.m. Don't be late." Adrian looked at the message. At the time, 11:47 a.m., at the city moving around him like he didn't exist. And for the first time since this all started, he felt something other than anger or confusion or wounded pride. He felt tired. Tired of fighting a battle he'd already lost. Tired of chasing answers that wouldn't change anything. Tired of pretending he was the victim when he'd been the one to stop caring first. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe he needed to let this go. Maybe Vivian Volkov, not Hale, not Voss, but Volkov, was never his to lose in the first place. He pushed off the building, started walking toward his lawyer's office, and tried very hard not to think about the fact that his entire world had shifted in less than 48 hours. Tried very hard not to think about Vivian at all, and failed completely. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old coffee. Adrian sat in a conference room with windows that overlooked 6th Avenue, watching traffic crawl through midday gridlock, while his attorney, Paul Hendricks, shuffled through paperwork that represented the end of his marriage. "This is all pretty standard," Paul said, sliding documents across the polished table. "The house in Connecticut goes to Vivian. You already signed off on that, though you probably didn't realize it at the time. The apartment stays with you. Investment accounts are split according to the prenup, which frankly is more generous to you than you deserve, given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Adrian asked, though he knew. Paul gave him a look. "The circumstances where you were sleeping with Lena Marquez for 8 months while your wife quietly documented everything." Adrian's stomach dropped. She documented receipts, hotel records, credit card statements. She had a case for infidelity if she wanted to push it. She didn't. She took the clean route instead. Paul tapped the papers. "You should be grateful. She could have made this very ugly. Why didn't she? You'd have to ask her, though I don't recommend it." Paul pulled out another folder. "There's one more thing. Vivian's requesting that you cease all contact. No calls, no emails, no showing up at places she might be. It's not a restraining order, but it's the step before one." "I haven't contacted her." "No, but you've been asking questions about her new husband. And apparently he's concerned about it." Paul leaned back. "Look, Adrian, I'm going to give you advice you're not paying me for. Let her go. Sign these papers, move on with your life, and forget Vivian Volkov exists." Everyone keeps saying that. Because everyone's right. Whatever you think you're going to accomplish by digging into her new marriage, you're wrong. You'll accomplish nothing except making yourself look pathetic. Adrian took the pen Paul offered and started signing, page after page. His signature repeated until it stopped looking like his name and started looking like a symbol he didn't understand. Each signature felt like giving up a piece of something he couldn't identify. Not Vivian herself. He'd lost her long before the divorce. Maybe just the illusion that he'd been in control. "Done," Adrian said finally, pushing the stack back across the table. "Good. I'll file these today. In about 6 weeks, you'll officially be a single man again." Paul gathered the papers. "And Adrian? Take a vacation. Clear your head. Do something that doesn't involve obsessing over your ex-wife." Adrian left the office at 4:30. The December afternoon was already darkening, the sun giving up early like it knew something he didn't. He walked instead of getting a car, needed the movement, the cold air, the noise of the city to drown out his thoughts. His phone rang. Lena. He stared at her name on the screen, finger hovering over the decline button, answered instead. "Hey. Hey yourself, where are you?" "Walking. Just left my lawyer's." "How'd it go?" "Fine. Signed everything. It's done." Lena was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay?" "I don't know, maybe. Probably not." Adrian stopped at a corner, waited for the light. "Can we talk? Actually talk, not fight?" "My place. 20 minutes. She hung up. Adrian flagged a cab, gave the driver Lena's address, and spent the ride staring out the window at a city that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Like he'd been living in one version of New York and had just woken up in another. Lena answered her door in the same clothes from yesterday. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, though she'd probably deny it if he asked. "Come in," she said. Adrian followed her to the couch. She'd poured 2 glasses of wine, red, expensive, the kind she saved for bad days. She handed him one without asking if he wanted it. "So," she said, "tell me." "Tell you what?" "Whatever you're thinking, because you've been thinking something since the gala and you haven't told me what it is." Adrian drank. The wine was too dry, too bitter. "I met with Roman Volkov this morning." Lena nearly dropped her glass. "You what?" "He called me, asked me to come to his office. I went." "Are you insane, Adrian? I told you to stay away from him." "He wanted to warn me off, tell me to stop asking questions, stop investigating." Adrian set his glass down. "He wasn't wrong about any of it." "What did he say?" "That I treated Vivian like furniture, that I ignored her until she disappeared, that she chose him because he actually paid attention to her." Adrian laughed, but it came out hollow. "And the worst part is he's right. I did all of that. I was exactly the husband he described." Lena reached for his hand. "You weren't perfect. Neither was she. That's how marriages fall apart." "But she didn't fall apart. That's what I can't get past. She got stronger. She planned her exit. She found someone better. While I was..." He gestured vaguely between them. "Here. Thinking I was making choices when really I was just reacting." "So what are you saying? That you regret us?" "I'm saying I don't know what this is, what we are." Adrian looked at her directly. "Do you?" Lena pulled her hand back. "I thought I did. I thought we were building something real. But now I'm wondering if I was just convenient, a reason to leave a marriage you were too scared to end honestly." "That's not fair, isn't it?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Be honest with me, Adrian, right now. If Vivian hadn't shown up at that gala, if she'd just signed the papers quietly and disappeared, would you be here with me? Or would you have found another excuse to keep one foot out the door?" Adrian opened his mouth to deny it, to reassure her, but the words wouldn't come because he didn't know the answer. Lena saw the hesitation. She stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city lights beginning to flicker on. "I think you should go." "Lena, I'm serious. I can't do this. I can't be with someone who's still figuring out if he wants to be with me." She turned back to face him. "I thought I could wait it out. Thought you just needed time to process the divorce. But you're not processing the divorce, Adrian. You're processing the fact that you lost control of the narrative. And until you deal with that, you're going to be useless to me." "So that's it? We're done? We were never really started, not honestly." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I loved you. Maybe I still do. But I'm not going to spend the next year competing with a ghost. You need to figure out what you actually want. And until you do, I need you to leave me alone." Adrian stood slowly. Part of him wanted to fight this, to convince her she was wrong, that they could make it work. But a larger part, the honest part, knew she was right. "I'm sorry," he said. "So am I." He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. Out in the hallway, Adrian stood motionless, listening to his own breathing, trying to figure out how he'd lost everything in less than a week. His phone buzzed. Email from Paul, papers filed. "You're officially in the system. Congratulations." Adrian deleted it without responding. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of gray December days and pointless routine. Adrian went to his office, attended meetings he barely remembered, signed off on deals he didn't care about. His assistant asked if he was feeling okay. He said yes. She didn't believe him. He stopped calling Lena, stopped checking her social media, stopped thinking about what they could have been if he'd been a different person. He also stopped looking for information about Vivian, stopped searching for articles about Roman Volkov, stopped trying to understand what had happened to his marriage, or at least he tried to stop. But late at night, alone in his apartment with scotch and silence, he found himself scrolling through old photos on his phone, pictures from 5 years ago when he and Vivian had first gotten married. She looked younger in those photos, happier. So did he. There was one from their honeymoon in Italy, Vivian standing in front of the Trevi fountain, laughing at something Adrian had said. He couldn't remember what it was. Couldn't remember the last time he'd made her laugh like that. Christmas came and went. Adrian spent it alone, declining invitations from friends who were either genuinely concerned or just nosy. He ordered Chinese food and watched old movies and tried not to think about the fact that last Christmas, Vivian had still been living in the apartment, moving through rooms like a shadow he'd stopped noticing. New Year's Eve arrived with parties Adrian didn't attend and resolutions he didn't make. At midnight, he stood on his balcony, watching fireworks explode over the city, and wondered where Vivian was. If she was watching the same sky, if she was happy, if she ever thought about him at all. His phone rang at 12:47 a.m. Unknown number. Adrian almost ignored it. Answered instead because what else did he have to do at 12:47 on New Year's Day? Hello? Adrian Voss? A woman's voice this time. Young, nervous. Who's asking? My name is Emma Chen. I'm a journalist with the Metropolitan. I'm working on a story about Roman Volkov, and I was hoping you might be willing to talk. Adrian's grip tightened on his phone. How did you get this number? I'm a journalist. Getting numbers is what I do. A pause. Look, I know this is probably the last thing you want to discuss, but I think there are things about your ex-wife's new husband that the public should know, things that might concern you. I'm not interested. Mr. Voss, please. Just 5 minutes. I have information about Volkov's business operations, about where his money actually comes from, about connections to organizations that... I said I'm not interested. Adrian's voice was harder than he meant it to be. Whatever story you're chasing, leave me out of it, and leave Vivian out of it too. Your ex-wife married a man with very questionable... Adrian hung up, blocked the number, stood on his balcony in the freezing January air and felt something shift inside him. He didn't want to know, didn't want to dig into Roman's past or uncover secrets that wouldn't change anything. Didn't want to be the bitter ex-husband who couldn't let go. He wanted to move on, actually move on, not just pretend. The next morning, Adrian called his assistant. Book me a flight. Somewhere warm. I don't care where. Just get me out of New York for a few weeks. When do you want to leave? Today, if possible. Tomorrow, at the latest. She called back 2 hours later with options. Adrian picked the Maldives because it was far and expensive and the kind of place where he wouldn't run into anyone he knew. He packed a bag, left his apartment, and didn't look back. The resort was everything the brochure promised. White sand beaches, crystal water, overwater bungalows with privacy and views that belonged on postcards. Adrian spent his days swimming and reading books he'd bought at the airport and trying very hard not to think about New York. It almost worked. On his 4th day there, he met someone at the resort bar. Her name was Claire. She was from London, and she was there recovering from her own divorce. They talked for hours over drinks that cost too much and tasted like coconut and regret. The worst part, Claire said, her British accent making even sadness sound elegant, is feeling like you wasted all that time. 5 years I gave him. 5 years of my life, and at the end of it, I had nothing to show for it except a hyphenated last name I'm now trying to get rid of. Did you see it coming? Adrian asked. The end? Bits of it. Little moments where I thought, this isn't right. But I ignored them. Told myself it was just a rough patch, that we'd get through it. She swirled her drink. What about you? Did you see your divorce coming? No, which is probably the problem. I was so busy not paying attention that I missed the entire collapse. Was there someone else? For her, I mean? Yeah, there was. Adrian finished his drink. And he's everything I'm not. Powerful, attentive, dangerous, probably. She chose him, and I can't even be angry about it because I know why she did. Claire nodded like she understood. Does it get easier? The accepting part? I'll let you know when I figure it out. They spent the next week together, not quite dating, but not quite just friends. Walking on the beach, having dinner, sharing stories about their failed marriages like war veterans comparing scars. It was easy, comfortable, safe. On Adrian's last night at the resort, Claire kissed him. It was a good kiss, soft and tentative and tasting like the wine they'd been drinking. But when Adrian pulled back, he felt nothing. No spark, no desire. Just the ghost of what kissing someone should feel like. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. I know where your head is. Claire smiled sadly. You're still in love with her, aren't you? Your ex-wife? No, I don't think so. I think I'm just... Adrian searched for the right word. Haunted by the version of her I never bothered to know. That might be worse. Yeah, it might be. He flew back to New York on January 15th, tanned and rested and no closer to answers than when he'd left. His apartment felt smaller somehow, colder, like it had shrunk in his absence. There was mail piled on his counter, bills, junk, and one envelope that made his heart stop. Heavy paper. Expensive. The return address was a law firm he didn't recognize. Adrian opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single card, cream-colored, embossed lettering. You are cordially invited to the Volkov Foundation's inaugural gala, celebrating our commitment to supporting survivors and rebuilding lives. February 14th, 2026. The Plaza Hotel. Black tie. At the bottom, handwritten in perfect script, it would mean a great deal if you could attend. V. Adrian read it 3 times, trying to understand why Vivian would invite him. Why she would want him at her event after everything. After Roman's warning, after the cease contact request through the lawyers. He should throw it away. Should RSVP with a polite decline. Should take this for what it probably was. A formality. An invitation sent to everyone in her old social circle. Instead, he found himself Googling the event. It was already making news. Major donors, political figures, a fundraising goal of $50 million. Vivian's name was everywhere. Interviews, profiles, photos of her and Roman at planning meetings. In every photo, she looked the same, composed, powerful, happy. Adrian set the invitation on his counter and stared at it for a long time. His phone rang. Marcus Chen. Adrian, you're back. How was the vacation? Fine. What do you want, Marcus? Straight to business. I like it. Marcus's voice had that too cheerful quality that meant he was about to ask for something. Did you get an invitation to the Volkov Foundation Gala? Just got it. Are you going? I don't know. Probably not. You should. I mean, it's going to be the event of the season. Everyone who matters will be there. Plus, I heard Vivian specifically requested that you be invited. Adrian's pulse quickened. Where did you hear that? I have sources. The point is she wants you there, which is interesting, don't you think, after all the drama? Marcus, why are you really calling? A pause. Because I need a favor. I need an introduction to Roman Volkov. And you're married to, we're married to his wife. That's an in. I'm not introducing you to Roman Volkov. Come on, Adrian, this could be huge for both of us. The man has connections all over the world. If we could get him interested in our portfolio, in the expansion into Eastern Europe, no. Adrian, I said no. Find someone else to use. Adrian hung up before Marcus could respond. But the call left him unsettled. Because Marcus was right about one thing, Vivian had specifically requested his invitation. Paul had confirmed it when Adrian called him 20 minutes later. Yeah, she asked that you be included on the guest list, said it was important. I don't know why, and I didn't ask. Should I go? That's above my pay grade, Adrian, but if you do go, behave yourself. Don't make a scene. Don't confront Volkov. Just smile, donate to the cause, and leave. Easy to say, harder to do. The next 4 weeks crawled by with painful slowness. Adrian threw himself into work, trying to rebuild the focus he'd lost. His business was suffering, nothing catastrophic, but deals were taking longer to close. Clients were asking more questions. Confidence was slipping. He also noticed something strange. Contracts that should have been straightforward suddenly hit complications. Permits that should have been rubber-stamped got delayed. Partners who'd been enthusiastic started hedging their commitments. Small things, individually meaningless, but together they formed a pattern. Roman's warning echoed in Adrian's mind. I don't need to hurt you. All I need to do is make a few phone calls. Was this it? Was Roman quietly dismantling Adrian's business as a message? Or was Adrian just paranoid, seeing conspiracies where there was only bad luck? He tried to find out, made calls, asked questions, but nobody would give him a straight answer, just vague excuses and uncomfortable silences. By mid-February, 3 deals had fallen through completely. Adrian's business partner David pulled him aside after a particularly brutal meeting with investors who'd suddenly decided to pull their funding. What the hell is going on? David demanded. We've lost $6 million in commitments this month. $6 million, Adrian, and nobody will tell me why. I don't know. Bullshit. This started right after your divorce, right after that gala where your ex-wife showed up with Roman Volkov. David's eyes were hard. Did you piss him off? Did you do something stupid? I didn't do anything. Then why are we hemorrhaging money? Why are people who were ready to sign suddenly ghosting us? I'll fix it. You better. Because if this continues, we're going to have serious problems. The kind that end partnerships. Adrian worked late that night, making calls, sending emails, trying to salvage what he could. Around midnight, his phone rang. Unknown number. Again. Hello? Mr. Voss, this is Emma Chen. We spoke on New Year's. I told you I'm not interested in talking. I know, but I think you'll want to hear what I've found about your business problems. Adrian froze. What business problems? The deal's falling through, the investors backing out, the permits getting delayed. Emma's voice was urgent. It's not a coincidence. I have sources that confirm Roman Volkov has been making calls, applying pressure, making sure anyone who does business with you knows it would be unwise. Why would he do that? Because you haven't stopped asking questions about him. Because you make him nervous. Because he wants you to disappear, and this is how he makes people disappear. Slowly, quietly, by destroying their credibility and their livelihood. Adrian sat down heavily. How do you know this? I've been investigating Volkov for 6 months. I have sources inside his organization. People who are scared but willing to talk. And they all say the same thing. He's methodical, patient. He doesn't destroy people overnight. He does it gradually, so they don't even realize what's happening until it's too late. What do you want from me? I want you to go on record. Tell me about your interactions with him, about the warning he gave you, about what's happening to your business. Help me expose what he really is. Adrian thought about it, about the satisfaction of fighting back, of telling his story, of maybe, finally, having some power in this situation. Then he thought about Vivian, about the foundation she'd built, about the women it would help, about the fact that destroying Roman would destroy her too. No, Adrian said quietly. Leave me alone, and leave Vivian alone too. Whatever story you're writing, we're not part of it. Mr. Voss, I mean it. Stop calling me. He hung up, blocked the number, sat in his office in the dark, and wondered if he'd just made a huge mistake. The invitation to the Volkov Foundation Gala sat in his desk drawer. Adrian took it out, ran his fingers over the embossed lettering, tried to decode the handwritten note. It would mean a great deal if you could attend. What did that mean? Why did Vivian want him there? Was it genuine, or was it something else? A test, maybe, to see if he'd follow orders and stay away? Or a power play, showing him that she could invite her ex-husband to her gala and he'd be so irrelevant that it wouldn't matter? February 14th was in 3 days. Adrian still hadn't RSVP'd. He should decline, should stay home, should finally, actually, let this go. But Claire's words from the Maldives kept echoing in his head. You're still haunted by the version of her you never bothered to know. Maybe going to the gala wouldn't give him closure. Maybe it would just make everything worse. But at least he'd know. At least he'd see Vivian one more time. Talk to her, maybe. Understand why she'd sent the invitation. Understand what she wanted from him, if anything. Adrian picked up his phone and texted the RSVP number on the invitation. Adrian Voss. One guest? Attending. The response came immediately. Confirmed. We look forward to seeing you. He set his phone down and wondered what the hell he'd just done. 3 days later, on Valentine's Day 2026, Adrian stood in his apartment in a tuxedo, staring at himself in the mirror, and tried to convince himself this wasn't a terrible idea. It didn't work. But he went anyway. The Plaza Hotel glittered like a jewel box on the corner of Fifth Avenue, its facade lit against the February darkness. Adrian's car joined the line of vehicles depositing guests, sleek town cars, the occasional limousine, a Tesla that probably cost more than most people's houses. He watched couples emerge in designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos, all of them moving with the practiced ease of people who attended events like this the way normal people went to the grocery store. His driver pulled up to the entrance. A valet opened the door. "Welcome to the plaza, sir." Adrian stepped out into cold air that smelled like exhaust and expensive perfume. Camera flashes popped from somewhere to his left, press photographers capturing arrivals. He kept his head down, moved quickly through the entrance and into the lobby. The grand ballroom was on the second floor. Adrian followed the crowd up the stairs, his invitation checked twice by staff who smiled professionally and waved him through. At the ballroom entrance, champagne was being distributed. He took a glass he didn't want and stepped inside. The space had been transformed since the charity gala 2 months ago. Everything was white and gold now, flowers, lighting, even the tablecloths. A string quartet played near the stage. Servers circulated with trays of food that looked too artistic to eat. And everywhere, scattered throughout the room like pieces on a chessboard, were New York's elite. Adrian recognized faces. Politicians, CEOs, old money and new money mingling uncomfortably. Marcus Chen was there, talking to someone from the mayor's office. Gregory Whitmore stood near the bar, already halfway through what was probably his third drink. And at the far end of the ballroom, holding court near floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park, was Vivian. She wore white, a dress that somehow managed to be simple and devastating at the same time. Her hair was different again, longer than at the last gala, styled in waves that caught the light. She was speaking with a group of women, all of them leaning in like she was telling secrets instead of making small talk. Roman stood behind her, slightly to the left. Not hovering, just present. His eyes swept the room constantly, cataloging faces, threats, opportunities. They landed on Adrian for half a second. Roman's expression didn't change, but Adrian felt seen, marked. Adrian Voss, I didn't think you'd actually come. Marcus materialized beside him with 2 champagne flutes, pressed one into Adrian's hand even though he already had one. This is bold, or stupid. I haven't decided which. Neither have I. Have you talked to her yet? To Vivian? I just got here. Right. Well, when you do talk to her, put in a good word for me with her husband. I'm serious about that introduction. Marcus, I'm not... But Marcus was already moving away, pulled into another conversation by someone whose name Adrian didn't remember. Adrian stood alone in the crowd, drinking champagne that tasted expensive and felt wrong, watching his ex-wife navigate a room full of people who wanted something from her. She was good at it. Better than good. She made it look effortless, the way she moved from group to group, remembering names, laughing at jokes, touching arms just long enough to make people feel important. When had she learned to do that? During their marriage, Vivian had hated these events, had stood in corners looking uncomfortable, counting minutes until they could leave. Adrian had always been the social one, the networker, the schmoozer. Now she was the center of gravity and he was the one standing in corners. She's something, isn't she? A woman's voice. Adrian turned to find someone he didn't recognize, 50s probably, with gray hair styled deliberately and jewelry that looked inherited rather than bought. I'm sorry? Vivian, she's remarkable. I've known her for about 6 months now, met her through the Foundation Planning Committee. The work she's doing, it's going to change lives. The woman extended her hand. I'm Catherine Breslin. I run a network of women's shelters in the tri-state area. Adrian shook her hand. Adrian Voss. I know who you are. Vivian mentioned you'd be here. Catherine's smile was knowing, but not unkind. She said it was important that you see what we're building, the impact we're going to have. Did she say why? No. But I got the impression she wanted you to understand something. What exactly, I couldn't tell you. Catherine glanced across the room at Vivian. She's different now, you know, from when you knew her, stronger. Like something that was sleeping finally woke up. Adrian followed her gaze. I'm starting to realize that. Good. Recognition is the first step. Catherine patted his arm. Enjoy the evening, Mr. Voss. And try not to look so terrified. It's just a party. She drifted away into the crowd, leaving Adrian alone with his thoughts, and too much champagne. The evening progressed. Dinner was served. Something French and complicated that Adrian pushed around his plate without tasting. He was seated at a table with people he vaguely knew but didn't care to talk to. They made polite conversation about the market, the weather, the event. Nobody mentioned his divorce. Nobody asked about Vivian. It was like they'd all agreed to pretend he was just another guest, rather than the ex-husband of the woman being celebrated. After dinner, the speeches began. Catherine Breslin spoke about the need for better resources for domestic violence survivors. A woman named Sarah told her story. Years of abuse, an escape, rebuilding her life with help from organizations like the ones the foundation would support. Her voice cracked twice. The room was silent except for her words. Then Vivian took the stage. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said, and the room settled into complete stillness. When Roman and I started planning this foundation, we knew we wanted to do something meaningful, something that would actually change lives, not just make us feel good about writing checks. Polite laughter. Vivian smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I spent a long time being invisible," she continued. "Not physically. I was here in this city, going to events, being seen, but invisible in the ways that matter. Invisible to myself, mostly. I'd forgotten who I was underneath all the expectations and obligations and quiet compromises." Adrian felt like she was speaking directly to him, even though she hadn't looked his way once. And then I met someone who saw me. Really saw me. Who helped me remember that being strong isn't the same as being loud. That leaving isn't the same as giving up. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that's killing you slowly. Vivian paused. This foundation is for every woman who's ever felt invisible, who's ever been told she's too much or not enough, or should just be grateful for what she has. We're here to say, you deserve more. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to rebuild. The room erupted in applause. Vivian stepped back from the microphone, and Roman moved forward to join her. He didn't speak, just stood beside her while she acknowledged the crowd, a silent reminder of exactly who was backing this operation. Adrian watched them together and felt something twist in his chest. Not jealousy exactly. Something else. Something that felt like grief for a version of his marriage that had never actually existed. After the speeches, the crowd dispersed into smaller groups. Music started, a live band replacing the string quartet. People moved toward the bar, the dance floor, the networking opportunities they'd really come here for. Adrian needed air. He made his way to the terrace, a long balcony overlooking Fifth Avenue, heated by standing warmers that fought a losing battle against February cold. Only a few people were out here, smoking cigarettes and having quiet conversations. Adrian stood at the railing, looked down at traffic and pedestrians, tried to figure out what he was doing here, what he'd expected to accomplish. "You came." He turned. Vivian stood 3 feet away, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. Up close, the changes were even more pronounced. Fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. A scar on her left hand he didn't remember. Small things that added up to someone different. "You invited me," Adrian said. "I wasn't sure you would, after everything." "Neither was I." He gestured vaguely toward the ballroom. "Hell of an event. The foundation is impressive." "Thank you. We've worked hard on it." Vivian moved to the railing beside him, but not close, maintaining distance. "How have you been? Honestly?" "Not great. My business is falling apart. My relationship with Lena ended. I spent 3 weeks in the Maldives trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life." He looked at her. "How about you? How's married life treating you?" "It's good. Different. Better than what we had." The honesty stung, but Adrian couldn't argue with it. "Why did you invite me here, Vivian? Really?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. "Because I wanted you to see what I built, what I became without you." She finally looked at him. "And because I wanted to make sure you understood that I'm not angry. I don't hate you. I just moved on, and I needed you to see that." Mission accomplished. "Adrian, no, I'm serious. You win. You moved on better, faster, with someone more powerful. You built something meaningful while I've been," he gestured helplessly, "falling apart. So congratulations. You got your revenge." "This isn't revenge." Vivian's voice was sharp. "Revenge would have been exposing your affair at your own event. Revenge would have been taking you for everything in the divorce. Revenge would have been making sure everyone knew exactly what kind of husband you were." "Then what is this?" "This is me living my life, building something that matters, helping people who need it." She turned to face him fully. "You think everything I do is about you. That's always been your problem, Adrian. You can't conceive of a world where you're not the main character." "That's not fair, isn't it? Even now, standing at an event for a foundation that will help thousands of women, you're making it about your feelings, your business problems, your suffering." Vivian shook her head. I didn't invite you here to hurt you. I invited you here because I wanted you to understand that I'm happy, that I found something better, and that you need to let me go. I have let you go. No, you haven't. You're still digging, still asking questions about Roman, still trying to understand what happened to our marriage like it's some puzzle you can solve. She crossed her arms tighter. There's a journalist who's been calling you, Emma Chen. She called me too, wants me to go on record about Roman's business dealings. Adrian's stomach dropped. I told her no. I told her to leave you alone. I know, she told me. She also told me you could have made things very difficult for us if you'd wanted to, that you had information she could use. Vivian's expression was unreadable. Why didn't you? Because destroying him would destroy you too, and I'm not... Adrian stopped, searched for the right words. I'm not that person. I was a shitty husband. I ignored you. I cheated on you. But I'm not going to ruin your life just because mine is falling apart. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. Not quite softening, but close. Thank you for that. Are you in danger? With Roman? No, I'm safer with him than I've ever been. She paused. I know what people say about him, the rumors, the speculation, and maybe some of it's true. Maybe he's not entirely legitimate, but he's never lied to me, never pretended to be something he's not, and he protects the people he cares about. By destroying their ex-husband's businesses? Vivian didn't deny it. He warned you to stay away. You didn't listen. I stopped investigating weeks ago. But you didn't stop asking questions. You went to Malcolm Davis. You talked to Gregory. You made yourself a problem. She sighed. Roman doesn't like problems. So what now? He destroys everything I've built? No. Now you stop making yourself relevant to us. You rebuild your business, which you can do, Adrian. You're good at what you do when you focus. You move on with your life. You find someone who actually makes you happy instead of just convenient. Vivian's voice was almost gentle. And you let me go. Actually, let me go. No more searching for information. No more midnight deep dives into who I've become. Just let me be someone you used to know. Adrian absorbed that, the finality of it, the door closing completely. What if I can't? Then you'll keep suffering, and eventually Roman will get tired of your suffering creating complications for us, and he'll make it permanent. She said it matter-of-factly, without malice, just stating facts. I don't want that, Adrian. For what it's worth, I don't want you destroyed. I just want you gone from my life. That's fair. Is it? I'm not sure anymore. Vivian looked back toward the ballroom where music and laughter spilled out onto the terrace. I spent 3 years trying to be the wife you wanted, quiet, convenient, invisible. And it nearly killed me. Not literally, but the part of me that mattered, the part that had dreams and opinions and needs. That part died slowly while you stopped seeing me. I'm sorry. I know, but sorry doesn't fix anything. It just makes you feel better about the damage you caused. She turned to leave, then stopped. Roman's a good man, Adrian. I know you don't believe that. I know everyone thinks I married a criminal. But he sees me. He listens when I talk. He builds things with me instead of around me. That's all I ever wanted. I could have been that. If you told me, no, you couldn't, because you didn't want to be. You wanted a wife who fit into your life without requiring effort. And when I stopped fitting, you found someone who would. Vivian's smile was sad. Lena was never the problem. She was just a symptom. You would have found someone eventually, someone easier, someone who didn't ask you to actually see them. She walked away before Adrian could respond. Back into the warmth and light of the ballroom, back to her husband and her foundation and her new life that didn't include him. Adrian stood on the terrace alone, the cold finally seeping through his tuxedo, and knew she was right about everything. He went back inside eventually. Found the coat check, collected his things, prepared to leave. But as he was walking toward the exit, someone caught his arm. Gregory Whitmore, drunk enough to be honest. You talked to her? Yeah. How'd that go? About as well as you'd expect. Adrian shrugged free. I'm heading out. Already? The night's just getting started. Gregory gestured toward the bar. Come on, one drink, for old times. I don't think... I'm not asking. Gregory's grip tightened. We need to talk, privately. There was something in his tone that made Adrian follow. They ended up in a side room, some kind of private lounge the hotel used for smaller events. Gregory closed the door, poured himself a scotch from a decanter on the sideboard, didn't offer Adrian any. "You need to be more careful," Gregory said. "About what?" "About everything. About who you talk to. About the questions you ask." Gregory took a long drink. "That journalist who's been calling you, Emma Chen, she's trouble. The kind of trouble that gets people hurt. I already told her I'm not talking. I know, but she's persistent. And she's got sources, people inside Roman's organization who are willing to leak information." Gregory set his glass down carefully. "If that story breaks, if she publishes what she knows, it's going to cause problems. For Roman, for Vivian, for everyone connected to them." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're still connected, whether you like it or not. You're the ex-husband. If this blows up, reporters will come to you for comment, and what you say will matter." Adrian laughed bitterly. "You're here on behalf of Roman, aren't you, delivering another warning? I'm here as a friend, trying to keep you from making a mistake that will have consequences you can't imagine." Gregory's face was serious despite the alcohol. "Emma Chen is going to publish her story. Maybe next week, maybe next month. And when she does, you're going to be asked about it, about Roman, about whether Vivian knew what she was getting into." "And what am I supposed to say?" "Nothing. You say nothing. No comment. You don't speculate. You don't confirm. You don't help her build her narrative." Gregory moved closer. "Because if you do, if you give her ammunition, Roman will consider it a betrayal. And he doesn't forgive betrayal." "Is that a threat?" "It's a heads up from someone who likes you enough to keep you alive." Gregory picked up his drink again. "Go home, Adrian. Forget about Vivian. Forget about Roman. Focus on rebuilding your life. And when that article drops, you keep your mouth shut." He left without another word, leaving Adrian alone in the side room with the muffled sound of the party continuing without him. Adrian stood there for a long time, processing. Then he pulled out his phone and searched for Emma Chen's byline. She'd written dozens of investigative pieces for the Metropolitan, politicians caught in corruption, CEOs cooking books, wealthy families hiding offshore accounts. She was good, thorough. And apparently she'd been building a case against Roman Volkov for months. Adrian found her contact information easily enough. Professional email, work phone number, Twitter account that announced her stories and not much else. He could call her right now. Could tell her everything he knew about Roman's warning, about his business being systematically dismantled, about Gregory's threats, and the way everyone seemed terrified of a man who'd never been convicted of anything. He could be the source that broke the story open. But then he thought about Vivian on the terrace, about the foundation, about the women who would be helped by the money being raised tonight. If Roman went down, the foundation would go down with him. The money would dry up, the programs would collapse, and women who needed help would be left with nothing because Adrian couldn't let go of his need for vindication. He put his phone away, left the plaza through a side exit to avoid photographers, got in a cab and gave his address. The driver tried to make small talk. Adrian ignored him, staring out the window at a city that felt less familiar every day. When he got home, there was a letter waiting under his door. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Adrian opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, 3 sentences in neat handwriting. "Your business problems will stop as of tomorrow. Consider it a wedding gift. Don't make me regret my generosity." It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. Adrian read it 3 times, then carried it to his study and locked it in a drawer with the divorce papers and the gala invitation and every other piece of evidence that his old life had ended completely. He poured himself a drink, the expensive scotch he'd been rationing, and stood at his window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Vivian was probably still at the gala, still being celebrated, still building her new life while he stood in an empty apartment trying to figure out how to build something from nothing. His phone buzzed. Email from David, his business partner. "What the hell did you do?" "Richardson just called. Deal's back on. Full commitment. They want to sign Monday." Adrian stared at the message. Richardson was the investor who'd pulled out 3 weeks ago, the one who'd cost them $6 million. Another email. Then another. Deals uncanceling themselves. Investors suddenly available again. Permits mysteriously approved. Roman keeping his word. The business problems were stopping, just like he'd promised. Adrian should have felt relieved, should have felt grateful. Instead, he just felt tired, because he understood now what Vivian had been trying to tell him on the terrace. He wasn't the main character of this story. He never had been. He was just a supporting player in someone else's narrative, and the sooner he accepted that, the sooner he could start writing his own. He finished his drink, poured another, opened his laptop and started drafting an email to his assistant. Clear my schedule for March. I need a month off. Maybe 2. We'll explain Monday. He sent it before he could reconsider. Then he opened a new browser window and searched for therapists who specialized in divorce recovery. Found one with good reviews and evening appointments. Booked a session for next week. Small steps. Baby steps. The kind of rebuilding that happens slowly instead of all at once. Outside, snow started falling. Light flurries that caught the streetlights and turned the city soft and quiet. Adrian watched it come down and thought about Vivian in her white dress, standing on that terrace, telling him to let her go. He was trying, really trying. It would take time, maybe years, maybe forever. But for the first time since the gala 2 months ago, he felt like he might actually succeed. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but eventually. Eventually, he'd wake up and not think about her first thing. Eventually, he'd build something that was his and his alone. Eventually, he'd stop being the man who lost Vivian Hale and become someone else entirely, someone better, someone who deserved a second chance. The snow kept falling. Adrian finished his second drink and went to bed without setting an alarm. Tomorrow he'd deal with the business, with David's questions, with rebuilding what Roman had torn down. Tonight, he just needed to sleep. And maybe, if he was lucky, he'd dream about something other than the woman who'd walked away and never looked back. 6 months had a way of changing everything and nothing at the same time. Adrian's therapist, Dr. Linda Hoffman, had warned him about that during their first session. Recovery isn't linear, she'd said, sitting in her office with its 2 comfortable chairs and generic landscape paintings. Some days you'll feel fine. Some days you'll feel like you're back at square one. The trick is learning that both are temporary. It was August now. Hot and humid in a way that made New York feel like it was melting. Adrian stood in his office, a new office, smaller than the old one but his alone after he'd bought out David's share of the company, staring at an email he'd read 3 times already. From Emma Chin. Subject: Following up Mr. Voss. I know you asked me not to contact you, but I wanted to give you a heads up before the story runs. My investigation into Roman Volkov will be published in the Metropolitan this Sunday. It's extensive. 2 years of work, multiple sources, documented connections to offshore accounts and shell corporations that raise serious questions about his business practices. You're mentioned briefly as Vivian Volkov's ex-husband, but I've honored your request not to include any statements from you. I wanted you to know what's coming before it hits. The story will have consequences for everyone involved. I thought you deserved warning. Emma Adrian read it a 4th time, then closed his laptop. Outside his window, the city moved through its afternoon rhythm. Tourists, delivery trucks, someone selling knockoff purses on the corner. Life continuing like it always did, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in office buildings and newsrooms. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but the caller ID showed Dr. Hoffman. This is Adrian. You missed your appointment. Her voice was calm, non-judgmental, just stating a fact. Did I? What day is it? Thursday. You had a 3 p.m. Adrian checked his watch. 4:47. I'm sorry. I got caught up with work. That's the 3rd time this month. Are we going to talk about what you're avoiding, or are we going to keep pretending you just forgot? Adrian sat down heavily. There's a story coming out about my ex-wife's husband. It's going to be bad. And you're worried about her. I'm worried about what it means. For the foundation, for the women depending on it. He stopped. Yeah, I'm worried about her. After 6 months of work trying to let her go. Apparently I'm not very good at it. Dr. Hoffman was quiet for a moment. Do you want to come in? I have an opening at 6. Adrian looked at his calendar. Nothing but empty spaces. Yeah, okay. Good. See you then. She hung up. Adrian sat in his office for another hour, trying to work, failing, eventually giving up and heading to her office in Chelsea. The waiting room was empty. Dr. Hoffman appeared in her doorway exactly at 6, gestured him inside. So, she said once they were settled. Tell me about the story. Adrian explained. The investigation, Emma Chen's persistence, the email warning him about Sunday's publication. And how are you feeling about it? Complicated. Part of me thinks Roman probably deserves whatever's coming. Part of me knows it's going to hurt Vivian. And part of me... He paused. Part of me feels guilty. Like I should have helped Emma when she first asked. Given her information, made the story stronger. Why didn't you? Because it would have destroyed Vivian's foundation. Because despite everything, I didn't want to hurt her. Adrian rubbed his face. Does that make me weak? That I protected the man who dismantled my business? It makes you human, complicated. Both things can be true. You can recognize that Roman did wrong and still choose not to add to the damage. Dr. Hoffman leaned forward slightly. The question is, what are you going to do when the story breaks? When reporters start calling? When people ask for your comment? I don't know. Yes, you do. You've known since February, since Gregory warned you, since you made the choice to stay silent. She smiled slightly. You're going to protect her, even now, even after everything. That's stupid. Maybe. But it's also who you are. And there's something decent in that, even if it's mixed with guilt and unfinished business. Dr. Hoffman sat back. Here's what I want you to consider. You can't control what happens to Roman or the foundation or Vivian's new life. You can only control how you respond. And you've already decided to respond with silence, with protection. That's not weakness, Adrian. That's growth. It doesn't feel like growth. It feels like I'm still obsessed with her. Are you obsessed? Or have you just accepted that she's someone who changed your life, and that means she'll always matter in some way? Dr. Hoffman tilted her head. Not everyone we love gets neatly filed away. Some people stay with us. The trick is learning to carry them without letting them weigh you down. Adrian thought about that as he left her office an hour later. Thought about it during the cab ride home. Thought about it as he picked up Thai food he didn't really want and ate it while watching a baseball game he didn't care about. The story ran on Sunday, exactly as Emma had promised. Adrian bought a physical copy of the Metropolitan from a newsstand on the corner, carried it back to his apartment, spread it across his kitchen counter. The headline was brutal. The Volkov Empire. How one man built a fortune on shadows and shell games. The article was 30 pages. Diagrams showing money flowing through offshore accounts. Testimonies from anonymous sources describing intimidation tactics. Photographs of Roman meeting with individuals identified as having connections to Eastern European organized crime. Nothing concrete enough for criminal charges, nothing that would hold up in court, but enough to raise questions, enough to damage reputations, enough to make people nervous about associating with Roman Volkov. Vivian was mentioned on page 8. Vivian Volkov, formerly Vivian Hale, married Roman in a private ceremony last summer. The couple runs the Volkov Foundation, which has raised over $150 million for domestic violence prevention programs. Mrs. Volkov did not respond to requests for comment. Adrian's phone started ringing at 9 a.m. Reporters. Friends. Marcus Chen calling to ask if Adrian had known any of this. He ignored them all. At noon, his doorbell rang. Adrian checked the security camera. Gregory Whitmore looking exhausted. I'm not letting you in, Adrian said through the intercom. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to tell you thank you. Gregory's voice was distorted through the speaker. For not talking to Emma. For keeping your mouth shut. Vivian wanted me to tell you that. Adrian's hand hovered over the door release button. How is she? Handling it. Roman's lawyers are already working damage control. The foundation is issuing statements. They'll survive this. A pause. But it's going to get worse before it gets better. More stories, more scrutiny, more people asking questions. And Roman? Roman's been through worse. He'll be fine. But Vivian, Gregory sighed, she's tougher than people think. She'll be fine too. She just wanted you to know she appreciates your discretion. Adrian pressed the button. The door buzzed. Come up. Gregory arrived on the 7th floor looking like he'd aged 5 years since the foundation gala. He accepted the coffee Adrian offered and collapsed onto the couch. It's a mess, Gregory said without preamble. Total nightmare. 3 major donors have already pulled out. The mayor's office is reassessing their partnership. 2 board members resigned this morning. What does Vivian need? Nothing from you. She was very clear about that. She just wanted you to know that she knows you could have made this worse. That you chose not to. It matters to her. Tell her. Adrian stopped. What could he tell her? That he still thought about her? That he'd spent 6 months trying to move on and failing? That seeing her name in the newspaper made him feel protective and angry and helpless all at once? Tell her I hope she's okay, he finished lamely. Gregory nodded. I will. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this better than expected. The old Adrian would have jumped at the chance to hurt Roman, would have given Emma everything she wanted. Yeah, well, people change. Some people, not many. Gregory opened the door. Take care of yourself, Adrian. He left. Adrian stood in his apartment, coffee going cold in his hand, and wondered if Vivian was reading the same article right now. If she was scared. If Roman was protecting her the way he'd promised to. If she ever thought about Adrian at all. The next 2 weeks were chaos from a distance. Adrian watched it unfold through news articles and social media posts. The Volkov Foundation held a press conference. Vivian stood beside Roman, composed and elegant, reading a prepared statement about transparency and continued commitment to their mission. Roman said nothing, which somehow made him seem more dangerous. More stories followed. Not just about Roman's business, but about the Foundation's donors, about potential conflicts of interest, about whether money from questionable sources should fund charitable work. Public opinion split. Some people defended the Foundation. After all, money spent helping abuse survivors was good regardless of where it came from. Others called for investigations, for audits, for Vivian to step down. Through it all, Vivian stayed visible. She gave interviews, attended fundraisers, refused to hide or apologize. Adrian watched clips of her on the news and saw the woman from the terrace, strong, certain, unbreakable. He also saw cracks, small ones. The way her smile sometimes didn't quite reach her eyes. The way her hands would clench and unclench during interviews. The exhaustion that makeup couldn't quite hide. In September, Adrian got a phone call from Catherine Breslin, the woman he'd met at the Foundation Gala. Mr. Voss? I hope you don't mind me calling. Gregory gave me your number. What can I do for you, Ms. Breslin? I'm organizing a group of Foundation supporters. People who believe in the work regardless of the controversy. We're planning a fundraiser to replace the donations we've lost. She paused. I know you're Vivian's ex-husband. I know this is complicated, but I also know you care about the cause, and we could use your support. Adrian should have said no, should have maintained the distance he'd been trying to build. Instead, he said, tell me more. The fundraiser was planned for October 15th, smaller than the Plaza Gala, more intimate. A restaurant in Tribeca that Catherine knew, invite only, focused on people who understood that good work didn't become bad work just because of bad press. Adrian wrote a check for $50,000, sent it anonymously through his attorney, didn't tell anyone, not even Dr. Hoffman, but somehow Vivian found out. 3 days before the fundraiser, Adrian received a letter. Real paper, his address handwritten on the envelope. No return address. Inside was a single card. Thank you for the donation. You didn't have to do that. I know these months have been hard. I know the story about Roman made everything complicated again when you were finally moving forward. I'm sorry for that. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't even want it, really. I just want you to know that I see what you've been doing. The silence, the discretion, the support. It means more than you probably realize. I hope you're finding peace. You deserve it. V. Adrian read the letter sitting at his kitchen table, morning light streaming through windows he'd forgotten to close the blinds on. He read it 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in his desk drawer with all the other artifacts of a life he was still learning to leave behind. The fundraiser was on a Thursday night. Adrian debated attending for 2 weeks, changed his mind 6 times, finally decided to go at the last minute. The restaurant was warm and crowded, filled with people who looked determined rather than celebratory. Catherine spotted him immediately, navigated through the crowd to greet him. Mr. Voss, I'm so glad you came. And thank you for the donation. We all know it was from you, even if you tried to hide it. How? Your lawyer's not as discreet as he thinks. She smiled. Come. There's someone who wants to see you. She led him through the crowd to a quieter corner where Vivian stood talking to a small group. She looked tired but present, wearing black again like it was armor. When she saw Adrian, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Excuse me, she said to the people she'd been talking to, then walked over. Adrian. Vivian. They stood there awkwardly while Catherine made herself scarce. You came, Vivian said. Catherine's very persuasive. She is. She's also relentless, which is why I like her. Vivian glanced around the restaurant. This is smaller than the plaza. Smaller doesn't mean less important. No, it doesn't. She looked at him directly. Thank you for the donation, for everything you didn't say when you could have. I got your letter. I meant every word. You could have destroyed us. You chose not to. That's... She searched for words. That's who you should have been all along. When we were married. I know. I'm sorry it took losing you to figure that out. Vivian's expression softened slightly. How are you, really? Getting better. Slowly. Therapy helps. So does staying busy. Adrian shrugged. My business is rebuilding. I'm seeing someone new. Nothing serious, but it's nice. I'm learning to be alone without feeling lonely. That's good. I'm glad. How about you? How are you handling all this? He gestured vaguely, meaning the scandal, the press, the scrutiny. Some days are easier than others. Roman's been... She paused. He's been exactly who he promised to be. Strong, protective, honest about the complications. Is the foundation going to survive? Yes. We've lost donors, but we've gained others. People who believe in the work enough to look past the noise. Vivian smiled, and this time it looked genuine. We're opening our first shelter in November. Brooklyn, 30 beds, full services. It's happening because of what we built, scandal or not. That's incredible. It is. And you helped make it possible. The donation, yes, but also the silence, the discretion. If you'd talked to Emma, if you'd given her ammunition, Vivian shook her head. We might not have survived that. Adrian wanted to say something meaningful, something that would capture everything he'd learned in the past year about loss and growth and letting go. But before he could find the words, Roman appeared beside Vivian. Adrian. Roman's voice was neutral, but his presence was anything but. Roman. Thank you for your support. Roman's hand settled on Vivian's waist. Not possessive, but present. Vivian told me about the donation. It was generous. It's a good cause. It is. And despite our history, I appreciate your discretion regarding the recent unpleasantness. Roman's eyes were unreadable. Not many men in your position would have made that choice. Yeah, well, I'm trying to be better than I was. We all are. Roman looked at Vivian with something that might have been affection. If you'll excuse us, there are other donors we need to speak with. They moved away into the crowd, leaving Adrian alone again. He watched them work the room together, Vivian charming, Roman silent but commanding. A partnership, a team, everything Adrian and Vivian had never been. He stayed for another hour, made small talk with people who'd read about him in articles, donated more money because it felt right, then slipped out early and walked home through October cold that smelled like rain and dying leaves. His apartment felt different when he entered. Not empty, exactly. Just quiet in a way that used to bother him but didn't anymore. He poured himself a drink, expensive scotch that he'd learned to appreciate rather than just consume, and sat by the window watching the city lights. His phone buzzed. Text from the woman he'd mentioned to Vivian. Rachel. A divorce attorney he'd met through a mutual friend, someone who understood complicated endings and messy new beginnings. How was the fundraiser? Fine. Good, actually. Saw Vivian. How'd that go? Better than expected. I think I'm finally okay with it. All of it. That's progress. Proud of you. Coffee tomorrow? Yeah, I'd like that. Adrian set his phone down and realized he meant it. He was okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but okay enough to move forward without constantly looking back. The next morning, he had coffee with Rachel. They talked about work, about her daughter's college applications, about the restaurant they wanted to try next week. Normal things, easy things. You seem different, Rachel observed over her second latte. Lighter, maybe. I saw my ex-wife last night at a fundraiser. How was that? Strange, but good. I think I finally understand that she's not the villain in my story. Neither is her husband. They're just people living their lives, and I spent too long making their choices about me. Rachel smiled. That's very mature of you. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I'm just... She reached across the table, touched his hand briefly. I'm just glad you're getting there, wherever there is. Adrian looked at her hand on his, felt something that wasn't quite chemistry but was close enough. Potential, maybe. The possibility of building something new without the weight of what came before. Me too, he said. November arrived with the first real cold snap of the season. The Volkov Foundation opened its Brooklyn shelter to moderate fanfare and more good press than bad for the first time in months. Adrian sent flowers anonymously, didn't attend the opening, didn't need to. Emma Chen published a follow-up piece about Roman's business practices. More questions, fewer answers. Public interest was waning. People had moved on to the next scandal, the next outrage. Roman and Vivian appeared less frequently in the news. Their foundation continued its work quietly, effectively, without the spotlight that had briefly threatened to destroy it. Adrian's business stabilized, then grew. He hired 3 new employees, opened a second office in Boston, started dating Rachel seriously enough that she met his friends, stayed over on weekends, talked about future plans without him panicking. In December, 1 year after the charity gala that had changed everything, Adrian received another letter from Vivian. Adrian, I'm writing this because I think we both need closure. Real closure, not the kind we pretended to have. A year ago, I walked into that ballroom ready to show you what I'd become without you. I wanted you to see my power, my new life, my new husband. I wanted you to feel small. That was petty and human, and I won't apologize for it because it's how I felt. But what I didn't expect was for you to respond with grace, with silence when you could have spoken, with support when you could have sabotaged, with growth when you could have stayed bitter. You became the man I needed you to be 3 years too late, and that's sad. But it's also beautiful, in a way. We both had to lose each other to find better versions of ourselves. I'm not writing to ask for friendship. I'm not writing to suggest we stay in touch. I'm writing to say thank you for letting me go, for supporting something you didn't have to support, for proving that people can change even when it doesn't fix what was broken. I hope you're happy, Adrian. I hope you find someone who sees you the way Roman sees me, who challenges you, who makes you better. You deserve that. Despite everything, you deserve that. This is goodbye, the real kind, the permanent kind. Thank you for our 5 years. Thank you for the lessons, even the hard ones. Be well. Vivian Adrian read the letter in his office, afternoon light slanting through windows onto a desk that finally felt like his. He read it twice, then carefully folded it and put it in his desk drawer with the others. Then he took out all the letters, all the artifacts, all the pieces of a marriage that had died slowly and then all at once. The divorce papers, the gala invitations, the photograph from Italy, Vivian's handwritten notes. He looked at them for a long time, remembering. Not just the bad parts, the neglect, the affair, the quiet death of something that might have been beautiful, but the good parts too. The early days, the laughter, the moments when they'd been happy before they'd forgotten how. Then he put everything back in the drawer, closed it, and locked it. Not to forget, just to preserve, to acknowledge that this chapter had happened and was now finished. His phone rang. Rachel. Hey, still on for dinner tonight? Yeah, where do you want to go? Somewhere new, somewhere we've never been. She paused. I'm in the mood for adventure. Adrian smiled. Me too. Let me find us something. He hung up and opened his laptop, searching for restaurants, making plans, thinking about the future instead of the past. Outside his window, New York moved through its December afternoon. People rushing, horns honking, someone selling Christmas trees on the corner. Life continuing in all its messy, complicated, beautiful chaos. Somewhere in that same city, Vivian Volkov was probably in her office, running her foundation, planning programs, changing lives. Somewhere else, in an office Adrian had never seen, Roman Volkov was probably making deals, moving money, building his empire with methods Adrian would never understand or condone. They were living their lives, building their future, together. And Adrian was finally, actually, genuinely okay with that, because he was building something too. Not what he'd planned, not what he'd expected, but something real, something his. Something that didn't require him to diminish someone else to feel whole. He was learning that love wasn't about possession, that marriage wasn't about convenience, That sometimes the greatest act of love was letting someone go completely so they could become who they were always meant to be. Vivian had taught him that. Roman had reinforced it, and Adrian had finally, painfully, learned it. 6 months later, on a June afternoon that smelled like summer and new beginnings, Adrian proposed to Rachel in Central Park near the fountain where he'd once proposed to Vivian. Same location, different person, different man doing the proposing. Rachel said yes. They celebrated with champagne and phone calls to friends and plans for a small wedding in the fall. That night, lying in bed with Rachel asleep beside him, Adrian thought about Vivian one last time. Wondered if she was happy. Hoped she was. Hoped the foundation was thriving. Hoped Roman was treating her the way she deserved. Then he turned off his phone, pulled Rachel closer, and fell asleep thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday. Because that was the thing about moving on. It didn't happen all at once. It happened in small moments, small choices, small acts of letting go until one day you realized the past didn't hurt anymore. It was just there. A story you used to live in, a person you used to be. Adrian Voss had been a lot of things. A bad husband, a cheater, a man who'd taken his wife for granted until she disappeared. But he was also learning to be something else, something better. A man who'd learned from his mistakes, who'd chosen grace over revenge, who'd supported something good even when it was connected to something complicated. A man who'd loved and lost and hurt and healed and come out the other side not perfect, but whole. And in the end, that was enough. Not everything. Not perfect, just enough. Vivian Volkov had taught him that too, even if she'd never intended to. For that lesson, and for everything else, Adrian would always be grateful. But gratitude didn't mean he had to keep looking back. It meant he could finally, actually, completely look forward. And so he did.